My family ruined my dream vacation by leaving me stranded at the airport with my 6-year-old niece. They left a sticky note on her backpack telling me to babysit her so they could upgrade to first class. So I picked up my phone and called my sister's ex-husband. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from. Please hit like and subscribe if you have ever had your kindness mistaken for weakness by the very people who should love you most. My name is Chloe. I am 33 years old, and my family has always treated me like an unpaid intern in the grand production of their incredibly selfish lives. My lungs burned as I sprinted through Terminal 3, my heels striking the polished floor. Gate 24. I was 10 minutes late because my mother had deliberately given me the wrong parking instructions. I watched the jet bridge slowly retract from the airplane. They were gone. But my panic instantly turned to pure ice when I looked down. Sitting on a pink suitcase, clutching a bunny and sobbing quietly was my 6-year-old niece, Lily. I dropped my heavy travel bag on the floor and quickly rushed to her side. Lily looked up, her face stained with tears, and handed me a crumpled piece of hotel stationery she had been clutching. I read Sarah's messy handwriting. Canceled your ticket to upgrade Derek to first class. Babysit Lily for the next 2 weeks. You have plenty of free time with your little freelance gigs anyway. Enjoy your staycation. I dialed. Linda answered on the second ring, the background noise of the first-class cabin clinking with champagne glasses. "Mom, what is going on?" I demanded as I held Lily close to my side. "You left a child at the gate." "Stop being hysterical, Chloe," Linda scoffed. "We left her right near the front desk. She was perfectly safe. Besides, Derek specifically asked for a child-free vacation. He is a very busy man who needs to relax. Sarah could not risk him getting annoyed by Lily crying on a 14-hour flight. So your solution was to steal my ticket and ditch the kid," I asked, my blood boiling. "I did not steal anything. I simply reallocated family resources," Linda said smoothly. "You have always been so selfish with your money. Just like when you refused to pay for Sarah's boutique rent last year. You owe your sister this after you humiliated her by refusing to help her business. Her business went bankrupt because she spent the business loan on designer handbags, Mom. And this trip, I paid $40,000 for our family to stay in the Maldives. I paid for your suite. I paid for Sarah's. And you should be proud to help your family," Linda shot back. "Look, Derek is a billionaire. He is old money. He is going to marry your sister and elevate this entire family. Marcus never could give her that. Marcus was always working, always pushing his career, never understanding our family values. Sarah finally has a real man, and you are not going to ruin this with your jealousy." I told the airline to refund your economy ticket to Sarah's account to cover the upgrade difference. Consider it a wedding gift in advance. You forged my authorization to get that money transferred to Sarah, Mom. That is literal credit card fraud. I authorized it as your mother, she countered proudly. You should be thanking us. We saved you from a long, exhausting flight. You always complain about being tired anyway. Oh, grow up, Chloe. You run some tiny freelance consulting gig out of your apartment. You have zero expenses. I will not let your negativity drag down Derek. The line went dead. I stood there in the middle of the bustling airport listening to the dial tone. But I was done crying over these people. I looked down at Lily, who was wiping her eyes. "Are we going home, Aunt Chloe?" she asked, her lip quivering. I smiled a genuine sharp smile. "No, sweetheart. We are going on a much better trip." I reached into my bag and bypassed my personal phone. My family had no idea that my tiny freelance gig was actually Elysium, a premier crisis management firm handling the darkest secrets of the global elite. They did not know I moved millions of dollars before breakfast. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It belonged to Marcus, Sarah's ex-husband, and Lily's father. My parents had never hidden their disdain for Marcus. They hated that he was a self-made African-American man who built his wealth from scratch instead of inheriting it. They constantly whispered in Sarah's ear, pushing her to divorce him for someone with the right pedigree. Marcus was not just a lawyer. He was a top-tier corporate litigator, a senior partner at the most ruthless law firm in the state, and a father who fought fiercely for his daughter. When the line connected, his deep, calm voice came through. Chloe, tell me why my daughter's tracking app says she is sitting in Terminal 3 when she is supposed to be halfway over the Pacific with her mother. Sarah canceled my ticket. I said, my voice dropping to a cool, businesslike register. She dumped Lily at Gate 24 and took her billionaire boyfriend to the Maldives using my stolen funds. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was the kind of silence that precedes a devastating storm. I could hear him taking a slow, measured breath. Today marks the beginning of Sarah's court-ordered custody week. Marcus said, every word cut from ice. She has no legal right to abandon a minor, let alone cross state lines without her. Stay right there. I am 20 minutes away. We are going to make them regret this deeply. I will be bringing the full force of my own firm. Marcus materialized at Gate 24 exactly 18 minutes later. He did not run or look frantic. He strode through the chaotic terminal with the terrifying calm of an apex predator. Flanking him were two massive men in tailored dark suits. His personal security detail, a necessity for a man who handled high-stakes corporate litigation and frequently dealt with hostile opposing parties. Lily let out a squeal and launched herself into her father's arms. Marcus scooped her up, pressing his face into her curls, his stoic facade cracking for just a fraction of a second before returning to absolute stone. He whispered to her, promising she was safe, before handing her gently to one of his guards. Take her to the VIP lounge and get her whatever she wants, Marcus ordered. Do not let her out of your sight. As the guard led a happy Lily away, Marcus pulled a sleek tablet from his briefcase. His eyes were cold, scanning a digital document. He did not offer small talk. He went straight for the jugular. Section 4, Paragraph B of our final custody decree. Marcus recited, his voice slicing through the ambient airport noise. The primary custodial parent forfeits all temporary guardianship rights if they abandon the minor at any public transit hub cross state lines without the minor during their designated week, or place the minor in the care of an unapproved third party without 48 hours prior written consent. Sarah just hit the trifecta of parental negligence. I crossed my arms watching him work. She left a sticky note on her backpack, Marcus. A sticky note. Linda told me it was my duty to babysit, so Sarah could elevate the family status by flying first class with Derek. Marcus let out a sharp, humorless laugh. He tapped the screen of his tablet, his jaw clenching. Your parents finally got exactly what they engineered. They spent the entirety of my marriage treating me like the hired help because my bank accounts were self-made and my skin color did not match the aesthetic of their exclusive Connecticut country club. Richard once asked me if I felt lucky to be allowed in their dining room. I felt my stomach churn with the familiar disgust I always held for my parents' bigotry. They always hated that you saw right through them. They hated that I refused to fund their lifestyle, Marcus corrected, his fingers flying across the tablet keyboard as he drafted an email to his legal team. So they spent years whispering in Sarah's ear. They actively set up dinner dates and hotel reservations for her to meet men like Derek. They wanted old money. They wanted someone white, someone easily manipulated, someone who would blindly write checks to cover Richard's bad investments and Linda's shopping addictions. And Sarah was stupid enough to fall for it. And now she is committing credit card fraud to keep up the charade, I added. Mom proudly admitted she had the airline refund my ticket directly to Sarah's account to pay for Derek's first-class upgrade. They stole my money to impress a guy they think is a billionaire. Marcus stopped typing and looked up, his eyes narrowing. That is a federal offense, Chloe. Wire fraud and credit card theft. My legal team is filing an emergency ex parte order right now. By the time Sarah's flight touches down in the Maldives, she will officially be stripped of all temporary custody. She will have a warrant waiting for her the second she sets foot back on American soil. I am going to bury her so deep in legal fees she will not be able to afford a bus ticket, let alone a first-class upgrade. He locked his tablet and slid it back into his briefcase. His intense posture softened slightly as he looked toward the VIP lounge where Lily was safely eating ice cream with the security guard. I appreciate you calling me immediately, Chloe. Marcus said, his tone shifting from corporate shark to exhausted father. You are the only person in that toxic gene pool with a shred of decency. But I need to get Lily out of this environment. I will take her home. I am sorry they ruined your vacation. I know you paid for this out of your own pocket. The trip is dead. Go home and get some rest. We will deal with the police reports tomorrow. I stood my ground. The fluorescent lights of the terminal buzzed above us. I looked at the empty gate where my family had abandoned me, expecting me to quietly accept my role as the scapegoat. I thought about Linda sipping champagne, laughing about how I was just a freelancer with zero expenses. The trip is not dead, I said, my voice steady and completely devoid of the panic I had felt 30 minutes ago. Marcus frowned. Chloe, your flight is gone. You do not have a ticket, and the next commercial flight out of here is not for another 2 days. It is over. I reached into the inner pocket of my blazer and pulled out a heavy obsidian black card. The metal caught the harsh airport light. There were no bank logos on it, only a single silver emblem of a griffin, and the word Elysium etched into the matte surface. I stepped closer to him. You know my parents love to mock my little freelance consulting gig, right? They think I build websites for local bakeries from my living room couch. Marcus looked at the card, his corporate lawyer instincts kicking in. His eyes widened slightly. Elysium. That is the private concierge and crisis management firm that handles the royal families in Dubai and the tech magnates in Silicon Valley. They are practically a ghost organization. You have to be invited just to be a client. I did not just get invited, Marcus. I founded it. I have been the sole owner and CEO for 8 years. I manage the darkest, most expensive secrets of the global elite. I own the management company that controls the exact luxury resort Sarah and my parents are currently flying to. I gave them that discount. I own the ground they are about to walk on. Marcus stared at me, a slow, genuine smile spreading across his face for the first time today. You are the shadow CEO of Elysium. I flipped the black card between my fingers. I am. And as the CEO, I have certain perks. For instance, my company maintains a fleet of private aircraft ready to deploy anywhere in the world within an hour. The commercial flight they took will take 22 hours with layovers. My jet flies direct. We can be in the Maldives sipping cocktails on the beach a full 5 hours before Sarah even sees the baggage claim. Marcus looked towards the lounge, then back to me. His eyes were gleaming with the thrill of the impending strike. So I asked, tilting my head, how fast can you and Lily pack your bags? Because my pilots have been on standby on the private tarmac since this morning, and I refuse to let my family enjoy a single second of peace on my island. Let us go, Marcus said, adjusting his cuffs. It is time to show them what real power looks like. We bypassed the crowded TSA security lines and walked straight onto the private tarmac where my Gulfstream G650 was waiting. The sleek silver jet bore the subtle griffin emblem of Elysium on its tail. The flight attendants trained to handle foreign dignitaries and A-list celebrities greeted us by name. They ushered Lily into a plush leather seat that folded out into a full bed, instantly wrapping her in a cashmere blanket and offering her a customized menu of her favorite snacks. Marcus sat across from me, watching his daughter devour a plate of fresh strawberries and Belgian chocolate. The tension in his jaw finally began to relax. She hates flying commercial because Sarah always shoves an iPad in her face and takes a sleeping pill, Marcus said, keeping his voice low so Lily would not hear. The last time they flew to Florida for a pageant, Sarah forced Lily into Sarah, left her sitting next to a stranger for 3 hours because she wanted a row to herself. I shook my head, accepting a glass of sparkling water from the attendant. And Mom and Dad call her Mother of the Year simply because she dresses Lily in matching designer outfits for Instagram. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. They use her as an accessory, Chloe. They always have. When I fought for full custody last year, your father actually tried to bribe my legal counsel. Richard told my senior partner that I was unfit to raise a child because my demanding career was not an appropriate environment for a little girl. The absolute hypocrisy of that statement made my blood boil. Richard spent my entire childhood locked in his office, ignoring my existence unless he needed someone to yell at for his own mistakes. And meanwhile, Sarah cannot even handle a single afternoon with her own daughter without pawning her off, I replied, pulling my laptop from my leather tote bag. But her week of playing the perfect wealthy socialite is about to violently expire. My encrypted work phone buzzed on the mahogany table between us. I glanced at the screen and let out a dry, humorless laugh. It was the family group chat. Sarah had just uploaded a selfie. She was sitting in a commercial first-class pod holding a glass of champagne with Derek slouched in the background. Her caption was dripping with toxic satisfaction. So glad we left the dead weight at home. Hope you are enjoying your staycation, Chloe. First class is a vibe. Below the photo, Linda immediately replied with a string of heart emojis. You deserve this luxury, sweetie. Do not let Chloe's jealousy ruin your energy. She always was the bitter one. I slid the phone across the table so Marcus could see it. He read the messages, his expression hardening back into that lethal corporate attorney stare. Dead weight, Marcus repeated, glancing over at Lily, who was now happily watching a cartoon on the cabin's massive flat screen. She literally abandoned her own child at an airport gate, stole your funds, and has the audacity to call you jealous. I opened my laptop and connected to the jet's high-speed satellite internet. They think I am sitting in my tiny apartment crying over my frozen bank account, I said, typing in my secure administrative credentials. They think they won. They think Derek is their golden ticket to the elite social circles they have been desperately trying to claw their way into for decades. Marcus leaned back, crossing his arms. Let me guess. You are going to make sure their arrival at your resort is less than accommodating. I am going to make sure they understand exactly who holds the keys to the castle, I replied, logging into the central management database for the Maldives property. As the owner of Elysium, I had absolute access to every piece of data regarding the resorts my company managed, from VIP guest preferences to the financial backgrounds of everyone who booked the premium villas. I pulled up the reservation for my family. The booking was under Derek's name, linked to the Royal Overwater Suite that usually went for $15,000 a night. I had originally comped the suite for my parents, but the reservation had been secretly modified yesterday by Sarah. Let us see what kind of billionaire Derek actually is, I murmured, pulling up his attached billing profile. The system instantly flashed a bright red warning banner across my screen. I frowned, clicking on the detailed financial logs. The system ran automatic background checks on all high-net-worth guests to prevent luxury fraud. Derek had submitted 3 different black cards to secure the reservation upgrades and cover the incidental holds. Marcus, I said, my voice sharp. I need you to look at this. Marcus moved to the seat next to me, his eyes tracking the data on my screen. He read the flagged alerts, his legal mind processing the numbers in seconds. All 3 of his credit cards are generating hard declines, Marcus noted, pointing to the red transaction codes. And look at the bank routing numbers. These are not standard corporate or elite wealth accounts. These are high-interest secondary credit lines, the kind people use when their primary banks freeze them out for defaulting. I clicked deeper into the fraud alert report. The resort's security algorithm had flagged Derek's name against an international database. He does not have a single legitimate asset to his name, I said, reading the grim reality of my sister's billionaire savior. The address listed on his primary account is a rented mailbox in Delaware. He has 2 massive liens against him from a shell company in Nevada. Marcus stared at the screen, a dark realization settling over his features. He is completely broke. Worse than broke, I said, bringing up the secondary payment method Derek had frantically attached to the reservation just 2 hours ago to prevent the booking from automatically canceling. He is a parasite, and he just found a new host. I highlighted the new credit card number that had successfully authorized a $20,000 security deposit for the suite. It was not Derek's card. The name on the account was Sarah. My sister, who had not worked a legitimate job in 6 years, who relied entirely on Linda and Richard for her designer clothes and leased cars, had just attached her own credit card to cover a billionaire's expenses. But I knew Sarah's credit limit. She barely had $5,000 available on a good day. Marcus saw the name, and his stoic demeanor cracked, replaced by sudden furious alarm. Chloe, he said, his voice deadly serious. Sarah does not have $20,000. The only account she has access to with that kind of liquidity is the Joint Custodial Emergency Fund. I looked at him, my heart skipping a beat. Lily's college fund. She is draining her daughter's future to pay for a con artist's luxury vacation, Marcus stated, pulling his phone from his pocket. Not on my watch. Marcus did not hesitate. His fingers hit the screen of his phone with terrifying precision. He brought up the banking application tied to the irrevocable educational trust he had established for Lily the day she was born. He had specifically engineered that account to require dual authorization for any withdrawal over $500 because he knew Sarah's spending habits. But Sarah was not trying to withdraw $500. She was attempting to authorize a wire transfer for $25,000 under the guise of an emergency medical expense abroad. She categorized a luxury resort VIP fee as a pediatric medical emergency. Marcus stated his voice a low, dangerous rumble that commanded the entire cabin. She actually submitted a fraudulent invoice claiming Lily needed immediate overseas medical evacuation. She is using the daughter she abandoned at an airport gate as a financial shield to buy cocktails and overwater bungalows for a man who is currently wanted for wire fraud. She has always viewed that account as her personal rainy day fund, I replied, watching the flight attendant quietly clear away Lily's empty plate. Do you remember when she tried to forge your signature to lease that white Porsche 2 years ago? She told my mother it was a necessary business expense for her image, and Linda completely agreed. Linda actually yelled at me for refusing to co-sign the lease when you caught Sarah and shut it down. I remember Marcus said, opening a secure portal to his law firm's server. But this is not a leased car. This is international wire fraud. This is a felony committed across state and international lines. He tapped a final sequence on his screen and set the phone face down on the polished wood table. I just triggered a total asset freeze. Every single joint account, every secondary credit card tied to my name, and the entire educational trust is now completely locked in a biometric vault. When she tries to swipe that card at your resort, the machine will not just decline it. It will flag the card as stolen and instruct the merchant to confiscate it. I leaned back in my leather seat, a sharp smile touching my lips. Then we need to make sure the stage is perfectly set for when that happens. I opened my laptop and initiated a direct encrypted video call to the general manager of the Elysium Maldives property. The screen connected instantly, revealing a sharply dressed man sitting in a sunlit glass-walled office. "Good morning, Henri," I said. "Good evening, Chloe," Henri replied, his French accent thick, and his posture immediately straightening at the sight of me. "We are preparing for the arrival of the commercial flights. How can I assist you?" "I have a specific family arriving on the commercial flight from Dubai in a few hours." I instructed, pulling up the resort's guest manifesto and sharing it to his screen. "The reservation is under Derek Vance, but the primary payment method attached is a card belonging to Sarah Vance. They are traveling with an older couple, Richard and Linda." "I see the booking," Henri said, his eyes scanning the data. "They are scheduled for the Royal Overwater Suite. We have the welcome champagne prepared." "Keep the champagne but change the protocol," I told him, leaning closer to the camera. "When they arrive, I want them greeted in the main lobby. Do not usher them into a private VIP check-in room. Keep them in the center of the main reception area where everyone can see them. Let Derek demand the suite. Let Sarah act like she owns the island. Treat them with absolute impeccable courtesy right up until you swipe her card for the security deposit." "And when it declines?" Henri asked, catching on to the tone of my voice. "It will not just decline," Marcus interjected, leaning into the frame so Henri could see him. "The banking system will issue a code 04, confiscate card. You are legally required to retain the physical credit card and inform the guest that the bank has frozen their assets due to suspected fraud." Henri raised an eyebrow, a slight knowing smile appearing on his face. "Understood completely. And how shall we proceed with their accommodation after the card is confiscated?" "You will inform them that Elysium policy requires full upfront payment for any suite," I said smoothly. "When they inevitably fail to produce a working credit card, you will tell them that their VIP comp status has been permanently revoked by the owner of the management company. You will offer them the absolute cheapest transit rooms we have near the staff quarters, and you will demand they pay for those in cash. If they refuse, you leave them sitting in the lobby. It will be executed flawlessly," Henri promised. "Excellent," I said, closing the laptop. "Make sure your security team is on standby. My sister has a habit of throwing violent tantrums when she is publicly humiliated. The rest of the flight passed in quiet, luxurious anticipation. Lily woke up from her nap an hour before landing, stretching her arms and marveling at the endless expanse of turquoise water visible through the cabin windows. She pressed her hands against the glass, pointing at the tiny green islands scattered across the Indian Ocean. There was no screaming, no fighting, no chaotic panic. Just peace. Our jet touched down flawlessly on the private runway at the Male International Airport. Because we were flying under the Elysium corporate banner, we bypassed customs and immigration entirely. A black luxury SUV was waiting directly on the tarmac to transport us to the private seaplane docks. The commercial flight carrying my parents, my sister, and her fraudulent billionaire boyfriend was still 3 hours away from landing. They were likely sitting in cramped seats right now, complaining about the airline food and boasting loudly to anyone who would listen about the luxury suite awaiting them. They had no idea they were flying straight into a brick wall. We boarded the twin-engine seaplane, the side of the aircraft emblazoned with the Silver Griffin logo. The short flight over the atolls was breathtaking. When the resort finally came into view with its sprawling overwater villas and pristine white beaches, I felt a deep sense of ownership. I had built this empire from a tiny laptop in a cramped studio apartment while my family laughed at me. Now I owned the paradise they were desperately trying to infiltrate. The seaplane glided to a smooth halt at the resort's private wooden dock. A line of executive staff members dressed in crisp white uniforms stood waiting in the tropical sun. Henri stood at the front of the line, his hands clasped behind his back. The cabin door opened, and I stepped out onto the dock, the warm ocean breeze hitting my face. Marcus followed right behind me, holding Lily's hand. Henri stepped forward, bowing his head slightly in a deep gesture of respect. He did not offer the standard corporate greeting reserved for wealthy tourists. "Welcome back to paradise, boss," Henri said, his voice carrying over the sound of the gentle waves. "The trap at the front desk is set exactly as you requested. We are ready for them." I nodded, returning his respectful bow with a sharp, appreciative smile. "Perfect. Let them walk right into it." For the next 3 hours, Marcus, Lily, and I enjoyed the absolute sanctuary of the owner's private compound, a hidden estate carved into the highest point of the island, completely separated from the guest villas. Lily splashed in the infinity pool, her laughter echoing over the water, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the docks below. Marcus sat on a plush lounger, his posture relaxed for the first time since he walked into Terminal 3, sipping an iced espresso, while his legal team dismantled Sarah's life back in the States. Then my phone vibrated. A single text from Henri. "The commercial seaplane has docked. Showtime," I announced, standing up and smoothing the skirt of my linen dress. Marcus stood, his eyes locking onto mine with lethal precision. He held his hand out to Lily, who eagerly grabbed it, still clutching the stuffed bunny Sarah had left her with at the airport. Together, flanked by Marcus's 2 security guards, we walked toward the private glass elevator that descended directly into the main reception lobby. Through the tinted glass of the elevator shaft, we watched the scene unfold below us in real time. Sarah stormed into the open-air lobby, her face flushed red, complaining loudly about the humidity and the cramped seating on the commercial seaplane. She was wearing a ridiculous silk caftan and oversized sunglasses clinging to Derek's arm as if he were a human shield made of gold. Derek looked exhausted, sweating profusely in a linen suit that had seen better days, nervously checking his phone every 5 seconds. My parents trailed behind them, Richard barking orders at the bellhops carrying their excessive luggage, while Linda furiously fanned herself with a travel brochure. "I demand a golf cart to the Royal Overwater Suite immediately," Richard bellowed at a passing concierge. "We have been traveling for over a day, and my daughter requires champagne." Henri stood behind the polished teak front desk, an absolute portrait of professional serenity. He did not flinch at the shouting. He merely smiled, a polite, devastatingly hollow smile. "Welcome to Elysium," Henri said, his voice carrying perfectly across the marble floor. "We have your reservation under Mr. Vance. However, before I can issue your room keys, I require a credit card for the security deposit and incidental hold." Derek scoffed, reaching into his pocket with exaggerated annoyance. Just put it on my platinum card. The bank knows I travel. He slapped a heavy metal card onto the desk. Henri swiped it seamlessly. The terminal emitted a harsh, flat beep. Declined, Henri stated, his voice devoid of pity. Derek's face flushed. Must be a security lock. Try this one. He threw a second card down. Swipe, beep, declined. Henri repeated. Derek began to stammer, patting his pockets, his facade of immense wealth cracking under the bright island sun. Sarah quickly stepped in, placing a reassuring hand on his chest, laughing with a sickening sweetness. Oh, Derek, honey, your wealth manager probably just froze them because of the international charges. Sarah cooed, desperate to keep the billionaire illusion alive. I will handle the deposit. It is a tiny inconvenience. She reached into her designer bag and proudly presented her own card, the one tied directly to Lily's joint custodial trust. She slammed it onto the teak wood counter. Charge it! Sarah ordered Henri, flipping her hair over her shoulder. And I want the manager down here right now to discuss compensating us for this embarrassing delay. Henri picked up the card. He swiped it through the terminal. The machine flashed a bright, pulsing red. Henri looked at the screen, then looked up at Sarah. He did not hand the card back. Instead, he calmly opened a drawer beneath the desk and dropped her credit card inside, locking it with a sharp click. What are you doing? Sarah shrieked, her voice echoing off the high bamboo ceiling. Give me my card back. I'm afraid I cannot do that. Madame Henri replied, his French accent dripping with icy authority. The global banking system just issued a Code 04 alert. Your transaction has been flagged for massive multi-state wire fraud. I am legally required to confiscate this card immediately. Furthermore, all of your assets have been frozen. Sarah stood paralyzed, her jaw dropping open. Derek took a slow, horrified step away from her. You are lying, Linda screamed, rushing up to the desk, slamming her fist against the marble. Do you know who we are? My daughter is marrying a billionaire. I will buy this entire island and fire every single one of you. We are VIP guests. Henri smiled. You are not VIP guests. Your complimentary status has been permanently revoked by the owner of this management company. We require full upfront payment in cash for any suite. Since you cannot provide valid payment, I can offer you 2 cots in the transit facility near the staff quarters. Cash only, otherwise you are trespassing. The meltdown was spectacular. Sarah began screaming at the top of her lungs, hurling insults at the resort staff, demanding to speak to the owner, threatening to ruin the company, and desperately trying to assure a panicked Derek that this was all just a massive banking error. Richard was yelling about lawsuits, and Linda was hyperventilating, demanding someone bring her a cold towel. Right at the absolute peak of their unhinged screaming tantrum, the soft melodic chime of the owner's private elevator rang through the lobby. The heavy silver doors glided open. I stepped out onto the polished marble floor. Marcus stood to my right, holding Lily's hand, and his 2 massive security guards stepped out to my left, forming a solid wall of dark suits and lethal intent. The entire lobby went dead silent. Sarah stopped screaming. Her mouth hung open, her eyes darting from me to Marcus, to the daughter she had abandoned at Gate 24, and finally to the Elysium security detail flanking us. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking completely hollowed out. Linda dropped her travel brochure. Richard took a stumbling step backward. They looked like they had just seen ghosts materialize in the middle of paradise. They could not comprehend how the daughter they had mocked as an unpaid intern was standing in the center of the world's most exclusive resort, flanked by elite security and the self-made titan they had spent years trying to destroy. Derek looked wildly between Sarah and Marcus, utterly bewildered by the sudden shift in gravity. Sarah's panicked eyes locked onto Derek. She realized instantly that the illusion of her perfect life was collapsing. Derek did not know she had abandoned her child. Derek did not know she was a fraud. She needed to play the victim. She needed to look like a doting, terrified mother whose child had been kidnapped by a ruthless ex-husband. My baby, Sarah wailed, forcing a hysterical sob as she lunged forward, her arms outstretched, intending to snatch Lily away from Marcus to complete her performance. She did not make it 2 steps. Marcus's lead security guard moved with terrifying speed, stepping squarely into Sarah's path. He planted his feet and raised one massive hand, blocking her completely. Sarah slammed into his arm and bounced back, stumbling awkwardly in her designer heels, totally powerless against the literal wall of muscle standing between her and the child she had thrown away. He gasped loudly, clutching her chest as if the security guard had physically assaulted her. She fought to catch her balance, her oversized designer sunglasses slipping down her nose to reveal wide, manic eyes. For a fraction of a second, the reality of being denied access to the daughter she treated as a mere prop short-circuited her brain. The pristine marble floor of the Elysium lobby seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Then the delusion kicked back in, louder and more frantic than before. She pointed a shaking, meticulously manicured finger directly at my face. "You followed us! You absolute psycho! You stalked my flight, Derek! Do something!" She tracked our itinerary. "She is obsessed with me, and she is trying to ruin our romantic getaway." Derek did nothing. He was still staring at Henri and the confiscated credit card locked securely inside the teak desk drawer. He looked like a man frantically calculating the fastest escape route to the nearest exit, entirely uninterested in defending a woman who could no longer fund his lavish lifestyle. His shoulders were slumped, his linen suit drenched in nervous sweat, completely shattered by the reality of his declining financial facade. Linda pushed her way to the front of the group, her face mottled with an ugly, dark rage. She completely ignored the undeniable fact that Sarah had abandoned Lily just hours ago at a commercial airport gate. She ignored the reality of Derek's brutally declined cards and the federal fraud alert looming over her golden child. Instead, her venom zeroed in entirely on Marcus and me. "How dare you bring him here?" Linda shrieked, her voice echoing harshly off the serene bamboo beams of the high lobby ceiling. "This is an exclusive luxury resort, Chloe, not some inner-city public park. You bring this aggressive, classless thug to intimidate us, to ruin our family vibe." Marcus has always been a toxic presence. He does not belong in circles like this, and quite frankly, neither do you. Marcus did not even blink. He adjusted his pristine cuffs with agonizing slowness, his expression one of mild clinical boredom. Lily buried her face safely in his neck, completely shielded from Linda's radiating toxicity by her father's massive, reassuring frame. Marcus looked at my mother the way an apex predator might look at a particularly annoying insect. He radiated absolute power, an immovable mountain, against her pathetic wave of insults. Linda was not finished. She turned her furious gaze from Marcus back to me, her eyes darting toward the front desk, where Derek's financial ruin had just been laid bare for everyone to see. She straightened her posture, desperately attempting to summon an air of maternal authority that she had never truly possessed. "Since you stalked us all the way across the globe just to make a scene, you can make yourself useful," Linda commanded, actually snapping her fingers at me like I was a disobedient servant. "Pay Derek's deposit, immediately. There is obviously some banking error with his accounts, and Sarah's card is tied up in a ridiculous fraud alert because of her international travel. You owe us this, Chloe. Do not be ungrateful to your family after we bailed you out in college when you could not afford to finish your degree." The absolute audacity of her revisionist history made me laugh out loud. It was a cold, sharp sound that sliced through the heavy, humid air and silenced the remaining chatter in the sprawling reception area. "You bailed me out?" I asked, taking a slow, deliberate step forward, closing the distance between me and my mother. I looked down at her entirely, shedding a lifetime of conditioned submission. "You did not bail me out, Linda. You forged my signature on a federal student loan disbursement check and stole $30,000 of my tuition money." Sarah flinched, clutching her designer bag closer to her chest, her eyes darting around the lobby to see if any of the other wealthy guests were listening to the humiliating truth of our family dynamic. "It was a family investment," Linda snapped, refusing to back down, though a bead of sweat rolled down her carefully powdered temple. Sarah needed capital for her business. It was an emergency. Her business went bankrupt in 4 months because she spent the entire operating budget on inventory for a failed luxury boutique and daily champagne brunches. I fired back, my voice ringing with absolute icy clarity. "I worked 3 jobs. I waited tables until 2 in the morning. I scrubbed floors at the campus library, and I tutored freshmen just to pay off the debt you fraudulently created in my name, so I would not be expelled. I ate instant ramen for 3 solid years while you bought Sarah a brand new leased car. I do not owe this family a single dime, and I certainly do not owe you a luxury vacation deposit. Richard, finally finding his voice after watching his wife and favorite daughter get verbally dismantled, puffed out his chest. He marched toward the front desk, attempting to project the heavy-handed authority he used to bully his middle management employees back in Connecticut. His face was a mask of indignant, misplaced fury. "This is unacceptable," Richard barked, slamming his hand down on the reception desk. He pointed a meaty finger at Henri, who was still standing behind the polished teak counter with perfect, unbothered posture. "I demand you call your security team immediately. I want this woman and her ex-son-in-law removed from the premises. They are harassing VIP guests. Kick them off the island right now, or I am calling your corporate office and having you fired on the spot." Henri did not reach for a radio. He did not flinch at the threat. He did not look intimidated in the slightest. He simply offered my father a slight, courteous nod. "I am afraid that is impossible, Sir Henry," said smoothly. He turned his back on my red-faced father, picked up a heavy leather-bound master ledger from the desk, and walked directly around the counter. He bypassed Richard completely, stepping right past a sputtering Sarah and a furious Linda, and stopped directly in front of me. With a deep, respectful bow, Henri presented the open ledger to me, holding out a heavy silver fountain pen. "The daily operations manifest requires your final approval." Boss Henri said, his voice carrying perfectly across the stunned silence of the lobby. "Shall I instruct security to escort these individuals to the transit rooms, or would you prefer them removed from your island entirely?" Derek froze, water dripping from his chin, his entire body trembling. He looked down at the ruined, bleeding fabric, then up at the staring faces of the actual billionaires seated around the room. He was completely, entirely exposed. Derek did not utter a single word. He spun on his heel, his ruined Italian leather shoes squeaking loudly against the acrylic floor, and sprinted toward the heavy pressure doors. He left a trail of toxic blue droplets in his wake. Sarah screamed his name, a desperate, echoing wail that went entirely ignored. She scrambled after him, her designer heels clicking frantically as she chased a man who was already planning his next escape route. Richard and Linda were left standing alone in the center of the dining room. The surrounding guests, a collection of tech founders and European royalty, stared at them with naked disgust. The silence was absolute. Richard grabbed Linda by the arm, his face a mask of purple humiliation, and dragged her out of the restaurant without looking back. Marcus signaled the waiter, ordering a fresh glass of water to replace the one that had been weaponized. We finished our scallops in perfect, uninterrupted peace. The next morning, the Maldivian sun broke across the horizon in a brilliant wash of gold and coral. I sat on the expansive teak deck of our overwater villa, sipping freshly pressed espresso while Lily slept soundly in the adjacent room. The gentle lapping of the Indian Ocean against the stilts provided a soothing rhythm, a stark contrast to the absolute chaos my family had brought to the island. A sharp, respectful knock at the villa door broke the morning silence. Marcus, already dressed in crisp linen trousers and a tailored shirt, opened the door. Henri stood on the threshold, accompanied by a man I recognized as our global head of corporate security. The security chief, a former intelligence officer named Vance, stepped onto the deck holding a thick, sealed manila envelope. "Good morning, Boss Vance," said, his tone strictly professional. "We ran the expedited background check you requested on the individual identifying himself as Derek. The results came back from our stateside contacts 10 minutes ago. It is significantly worse than a fake watch and a cheap suit." Vance placed the heavy envelope on the glass patio table between Marcus and me. I set my espresso down and broke the seal, sliding out a dense stack of printed reports, financial flags, and law enforcement bulletins. "His real name is Dennis Miller Vance," explained, standing at parade rest while I scanned the top sheet. "He is not a billionaire venture capitalist. He has 0 registered businesses, 0 legitimate corporate affiliations, and a credit score that barely registers. He is a serial romance scammer. He targets women who project wealth but exhibit clear signs of insecurity and desperate social climbing. Your sister fit his primary victim profile with absolute perfection. I flipped to the second page, my eyes widening as the sheer scale of his deception became clear. Dennis Miller had 6 different aliases spanning 4 states. The dossier detailed a meticulous methodology. He would rent luxury cars by the hour, buy counterfeit designer clothing, and frequent high-end hotel bars to scout his marks. He would mirror their lavish lifestyles, charm them into believing he was their wealthy equal, and then slowly drain their accounts under the guise of exclusive off-market investment opportunities. He has outstanding felony warrants in New York and Florida, Marcus noted, reading a legal brief over my shoulder. Grand larceny, wire fraud, and identity theft. He is looking at a minimum of 15 years in federal prison if they catch him. He latched on to Sarah because she paraded her black card around like a billboard. I said, a cold realization settling over me. He thought she was independently wealthy. He thought he had hooked a whale. Exactly, Vance confirmed. He was likely waiting for the right moment to pitch her a fake real estate venture in the Maldives, take her cash deposit, and vanish. But you froze the trust accounts yesterday. You cut off his access to the funds. The moment her card declined at the front desk, he realized his mark was broke. That is why he was so eager to pivot and offer you a business proposition in the lobby. He was trying to jump from the bankrupt sister to the actual billionaire. He is currently quarantined in one of the transit rooms with your parents, Henri added. He has not left the room since the restaurant incident last night. Our security personnel are stationed outside the door. He cannot leave the island without our explicit authorization. Keep him there, I instructed, closing the dossier. Do not alert the local authorities just yet. Let him sweat. Vance and Henri nodded, excusing themselves to return to their posts. The deck returned to its peaceful quiet, but the air felt charged. My sister had brought a wanted fugitive onto my property, blinded by her own desperate need to appear superior. Suddenly, the sharp buzz of a cell phone vibrated against the glass table. It was Marcus's phone. He picked it up, glancing at the glowing screen. His expression did not change. There was no flash of anger, no flicker of surprise. He possessed the supreme, unbreakable calm of a man who routinely navigated hostile corporate takeovers and multi-billion-dollar negotiations. A petty family squabble did not even register on his emotional radar. He slid the phone across the table toward me. "Your sister is awake," he said, his voice laced with dry amusement. "And she is feeling ambitious." I looked at the screen. It was an incoming text message from Sarah's number. The words were typed in frantic, aggressive capital letters. "Wire me $50,000 immediately, or I am calling the Maldivian police and the U.S. Embassy. I will tell them you and Chloe kidnapped Lily. I will tell them you are holding us hostage on this island. You have 1 hour to transfer the funds or you are going to prison." It was a textbook extortion attempt. It was clumsy, desperate, and entirely pathetic. Sarah was trapped on an island she did not own, stripped of her credit cards, locked in a windowless transit room, and sitting next to a man she still believed was a disgraced billionaire. She had no leverage, no evidence, and no legal standing, especially since I held full, unassailable legal custody of Lily. Yet her profound ignorance and staggering entitlement convinced her she could threaten my husband. Marcus reached for his coffee, his hand perfectly steady. He took a slow, measured sip, utterly unbothered by the felony accusations glowing on his screen. "In corporate litigation, we call this the flailing phase," Marcus noted, showcasing his professional excellence with a mild, analytical tone. "When a hostile entity loses all leverage, they resort to manufactured leverage. It is legally toothless, completely baseless, and incredibly predictable. Should I have my legal team draft a cease and desist, or would you prefer a more direct approach?" I smiled at my husband. He treated my sister's hysterical extortion attempt like a minor clerical error that barely warranted his attention. His absolute lack of emotional reaction was exactly the grounding force I needed. "I will handle it," I said. I did not type a response. I did not justify our legal custody. I did not engage with her unhinged threats of embassies and kidnapping charges. Arguing with Sarah only fed her delusion that her voice mattered. Instead, I picked up Marcus's phone and opened the camera application. I held the device over the table, and snapped a crystal-clear, high-resolution photograph of the top page of Vance's dossier. The image perfectly captured the bold red text reading, "Outstanding felony warrants," directly above a harsh, unflattering police mugshot of Dennis Miller, the man she knew as Derek. I attached the photograph to the text thread. I added a single line of text underneath the mugshot. "He is not a billionaire, Sarah. He is a wanted fugitive, and he is currently locked in your transit room." I hit send. I set the phone down and returned to my espresso, letting the digital reality of her ruined life fly through the airwaves and land directly in her lap. The digital read receipt appeared at the bottom of the screen almost instantly. Sarah had seen the message. She had seen the mugshot, the felony warrants, and the undeniable proof that her billionaire fiancé was nothing more than a wanted fugitive. I locked the screen and handed the phone back to Marcus. The Maldivian sun was fully up now, casting a brilliant, blinding light across the turquoise water. For a moment, the only sound was the gentle morning breeze rustling through the palm fronds. Then, from the direction of the main resort plaza, a sound pierced the tranquility of the island. It was a high, frantic shriek, sharp enough to startle a flock of white terns from the canopy above. "Let us go for a walk," I suggested, smoothing the fabric of my silk trousers. Marcus offered his arm with a dark, knowing smile. "With pleasure." We strolled down the wooden boardwalk, taking our time. We followed the escalating sounds of shouting and splashing, winding our way through the manicured hibiscus gardens until we reached the main infinity pool. The sight that greeted us was a masterpiece of absolute unfiltered chaos. Sarah was standing waist-deep in the crystal-clear water of the pool. Her expensive sheer cover-up was completely soaked, clinging awkwardly to her body, and her carefully applied makeup was running down her cheeks in thick, dark streaks. She was thrashing wildly, screaming at the top of her lungs and launching herself at Derek, or rather Dennis Miller. "You lied to me!" Sarah shrieked, slapping the water and sending a massive spray directly into his face. "You told me you owned a yacht. You told me you were taking me to Monaco. You are a criminal. You are a disgusting, broke criminal, and you ruined my life." Dennis did not cower. He did not maintain the suave, apologetic posture of the wealthy venture capitalist he had played for the last month. With his cover completely blown and his access to Sarah's funds entirely severed, the charming facade instantly dissolved. He looked at my sister with an expression of pure, unadulterated revulsion. As Sarah lunged forward to hit his chest, Dennis grabbed both of her wrists with a harsh, aggressive yank and shoved her forcefully backward. Sarah lost her footing, plunging beneath the surface of the water with a loud splash before sputtering back up, gasping for air and coughing violently. "You ruined your own life, you desperate, pathetic fraud!" Dennis roared, his voice echoing off the surrounding private cabanas. "Do not act like you are some innocent victim. You paraded that black card around like you owned the world, acting like you were royalty. You are nothing. You do not have a single dime to your name." Sarah stood frozen in the water, her chest heaving, completely paralyzed by the brutal reality of his words. "I target women with money." Dennis continued, his voice dripping with venom, pacing the shallow edge of the pool as he verbally dismantled her entire existence. "Women who have actual wealth. You were an easy mark because you are so incredibly insecure. You fake everything. The bags, the shoes, the attitude. You reek of desperation. I wasted an entire month pretending to care about your pathetic shallow life, only to find out you are as broke as I am." The few early morning resort guests lounging near the pool stared in absolute shock. Sarah covered her face with her hands, finally breaking down into loud, humiliated sobs. She was standing in the middle of a luxury resort she could not afford, verbally decimated by a con artist who realized she was not worth the effort to steal from. Before Sarah could wade toward the stairs, Linda burst onto the pool deck. My mother looked entirely unhinged. Her resort wear was disheveled, her face flushed a deep mottled red. I expected her to rush to the edge of the water to comfort her golden child, to pull Sarah out of the pool and shield her from the staring crowds. But Linda did not even look at Sarah. She completely ignored her soaking wet, weeping daughter. Instead, her furious gaze swept the deck, locking onto me the second she spotted Marcus and me standing calmly near the cabanas. Her delusion was so deeply ingrained, so fundamentally woven into her psychology, that her brain immediately manufactured a reality where I was to blame for Sarah's monumental stupidity. "You did this!" Linda shrieked, storming across the teak decking directly toward me. "You set her up." She marched past the lounge chairs, her hands clenched into fists, entirely blind to the reality of the situation. "You could not stand seeing Sarah happy." Linda screamed, spittle flying from her lips. "You could not stand that she found a wealthy, successful man while you were stuck working yourself to death. You hired this criminal. You paid him to seduce her and humiliate her, just to ruin her chance at happiness." The sheer absurdity of her accusation was almost impressive. She reached me, her face twisted with a lifetime of resentment and irrational rage. Without a single second of hesitation, Linda raised her hand high, stepping forward to slap me across the face. I did not flinch. I did not blink. I did not even raise my arms to defend myself. I simply stood my ground, knowing exactly what was going to happen next. Marcus moved with a speed that was genuinely terrifying. He stepped smoothly in front of me effortlessly, intercepting Linda's wrist mid-swing. He did not grab her aggressively, but his grip was absolute and unyielding. He held her arms suspended in the air, stopping her violent momentum instantly. He looked down at my mother with an expression of pure glacial dominance. "Touch my wife again." Marcus warned, his voice low, steady, and incredibly dangerous, "and I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your natural life in a cell." Linda gasped, her eyes widening in sudden sharp terror, as she tried and failed to yank her arm free from his iron grip. She sputtered, looking from Marcus's impassive face to my calm expression, finally realizing she had absolutely zero power here. Marcus released her wrist with a look of mild disgust. Linda stumbled backward, clutching her arm to her chest, her bravado completely shattered. Before she could attempt another hysterical outburst, a heavy synchronized rhythm of boots sounded against the wooden walkway. Henri stepped onto the pool deck, adjusting his immaculate suit jacket. Walking in perfect formation directly behind him were 4 uniformed officers of the Maldivian police service. They moved with absolute authority, their hands resting cautiously near their utility belts, their expressions serious and focused. The officers bypassed my sputtering mother entirely. They walked directly past the staring guests and stopped at the edge of the pool, their eyes locking onto the man standing waist-deep in the water. Dennis Miller froze, the water swirling around his waist, as his eyes darted from the pristine uniforms of the Maldivian police to the open beach access behind the cabanas. Pure, unfiltered panic seized his features. He scrambled backward, hauling his dripping body over the infinity edge of the pool. He hit the white sand, running a desperate, frantic sprint toward the dense jungle canopy. Sarah shrieked, pointing a shaking, manicured finger at his retreating back. "Arrest him! He is a thief! He stole from me! I am a VIP guest, and I demand you chase him down immediately." The officers did not flinch. They did not unholster their radios or initiate a pursuit. Henri simply offered a subtle, dismissing nod to the lead officer, communicating silently that resort security already had the perimeter locked down. Dennis was contained on an island surrounded by the Indian Ocean. His arrest could wait. The lead officer turned his attention back to the water, his expression entirely devoid of sympathy for the soaked, screaming woman. "Sarah Miller," he asked, his accented English crisp and authoritative. Sarah stopped thrashing. She waded toward the shallow steps, her ruined designer cover-up dripping heavily onto the teak deck. "Yes," she snapped, assuming they were there to cater to her fabricated victimhood. "Finally. You need to catch him. He committed fraud." The officer did not move. He reached into his heavy leather satchel and withdrew a thick stack of legal documents bearing the embossed seals of both United States Federal Court and Maldivian International Jurisdiction. He held the papers out. "You have been served, Miss Miller." Sarah stared at the damp pages, her brow furrowing in profound confusion. "Have you served with what?" Marcus stepped forward, his pristine linen suit a stark contrast to Sarah's drowned rat appearance. "You have been served with an international emergency custody injunction." Marcus stated, his voice carrying the calm, lethal weight of a judge delivering a final sentence. I initiated the filing the moment you abandoned Lily at the airport terminal. My legal team expedited the global jurisdiction protocols overnight. You are officially stripped of all parental rights pending a full federal hearing. Sarah looked at the papers, then at Marcus. Her brain, already fractured by Dennis's brutal humiliation, short-circuited completely. "You cannot do that!" she screamed, her voice cracking into a hysterical register. "She is my daughter. She is my property. Children are not property." "Sarah," I interjected, stepping up beside my husband. I looked at her with absolute disgust, shedding years of forced silence. "You forfeited any claim to her the second you handed her to a stranger and boarded an international flight to chase a con artist. But this is not an isolated incident, is it? We both know about the time you left Lily in a locked car in July to attend a sample sale in Manhattan. We know about the unpaid nannies you routinely abandoned her with for days at a time so you could party in the Hamptons. Yesterday was just the grand finale of your negligence." Linda pushed her way forward, her face purple with unhinged rage, completely blind to her daughter's monstrous behavior. "This is kidnapping. You set her up. You planned this whole thing to steal my granddaughter and ruin Sarah's chance at happiness." Without a second of hesitation, Linda raised her hand high, aiming a vicious, open-palmed slap directly at my face. Marcus moved with terrifying speed. He intercepted Linda's wrist effortlessly, his large hand clamping around her arm like a steel vice before she could even cross the distance. He held her arm suspended in mid-air, stopping her violent momentum instantly. He looked down at my mother with an expression of pure glacial dominance. "Touch my wife again," Marcus warned, his voice low, steady, and incredibly dangerous, "and I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your natural life in a Maldivian holding cell." Linda gasped, her eyes widening in sudden sharp terror. She sputtered, looking from Marcus's impassive face to my calm expression, finally realizing she had absolutely zero power here. Marcus released her wrist with a look of mild disgust. Linda stumbled backward, clutching her arm to her chest, her bravado completely shattered. Seeing her mother humiliated and her own fabricated reality collapsing into dust, Sarah snapped. The remaining shreds of her sanity evaporated in the humid island air. With a primal, unhinged shriek, she lunged at Marcus. She closed the distance in a millisecond, raising her hands into claws, aiming directly for his face. She swung wildly, her nails raking across his forearm, her fists slamming into his chest in a pathetic display of uncontrolled rage. Marcus did not retaliate. He did not step back. He stood like an immovable monolith, his expression completely blank. He absorbed her frantic blows without a single change in his breathing. He simply let the Maldivian police witness her complete psychological collapse and violent assault in broad daylight. The officers moved immediately. Two of them grabbed Sarah by the arms, dragging her off Marcus and pinning her wrists firmly behind her back. She thrashed against their grip, screaming obscenities and kicking her bare feet against the wet deck. Miss Miller ceased resisting immediately. The lead officer commanded, his voice sharp enough to slice through her hysterics. Sarah gasped for air, her chest heaving as she glared at me with absolute unfiltered hatred. "Let me go. I am a VIP." The lead officer pulled a second brightly colored document from his satchel. He held it directly in front of Sarah's tear-streaked face, ensuring she could read the bold print. "Based on the international injunction and your violent, unprovoked behavior here today," the officer announced, his tone entirely professional and unyielding, "I am executing a legally binding restraining order. You are mandated to remain 500 feet away from Lily Miller and her legal guardians at all times." Sarah stopped struggling. The fight instantly drained from her muscles, leaving her hanging limply in the grip of the two Maldivian police officers. She stared at the vibrant orange paper in the officer's hand as if it were written in an alien language. The words did not compute. Her ultimate leverage, the child she had used as a pawn to extort her way into my life, was legally unreachable. "If you violate the perimeter of this injunction," the lead officer continued, slipping the document into her trembling fingers, "you will be transported to the mainland holding facility in Malé and face international kidnapping charges." Escort her to the transit villa. She is not to leave the premises until her transport is arranged. The officers turned Sarah around and marched her away from the infinity pool. She did not scream this time. She did not hurl insults or threaten to call the embassy. She walked with a vacant, shattered stare, her wet cover-up trailing across the wooden boardwalk. She had lost her fake billionaire, she had lost her daughter, and she had lost her mind. Linda watched her golden child being escorted away by armed guards, her jaw hanging slack. She turned to Richard, expecting her husband to fix the situation, to yell at a manager to write a check, and make the embarrassment disappear. Richard puffed out his chest, attempting to salvage whatever shred of dignity he had left in front of the whispering crowd of European aristocrats and tech founders lounging nearby. He smoothed the collar of his damp polo shirt and glared at Marcus. "You think you are so clever," Richard sneered, pointing a thick finger at my husband. "You think a piece of paper means anything? I have lawyers who will tear that injunction to shreds the second we land in Boston. You are playing a dangerous game, Marcus." Marcus did not respond. He simply checked his vintage Patek Philippe watch, entirely bored by my father's empty posturing. Before Richard could launch into another tirade, a man in a flawless white linen suit approached our group. It was Julian, the resort's general manager. He moved with the silent, efficient grace of a man who managed crises for the global elite on a daily basis. He held a sleek black leather folio in his left hand. Two large, muscular resort security guards flanked him, standing at a respectful but highly visible distance. "Mr. Adams," Julian said, addressing my father. His tone was perfectly polite, yet completely devoid of the usual deference afforded to paying guests. "We need to address the status of your accounts immediately." Richard scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. "We will settle the bill when we check out. And I expect a full comp on the transit room, considering the absolute harassment my family has endured on your property today." "There will be no comps and there will be no checkout delay," Julian replied smoothly, opening the leather folio. "Your daughter Sarah's credit card has been flagged by her financial institution for insufficient funds. Furthermore, the individual she identified as her fiancé has abandoned the property, leaving several unpaid charges at the boutiques and the spa. Your current outstanding balance for the transit villa dining and the private jet fuel surcharge that was improperly billed to the resort sits at exactly $42,500. Linda gasped, clutching her pearls. $42,000. For a transit room, you ordered vintage champagne and beluga caviar to the room for breakfast, Julian noted, not looking up from the ledger. "The bill requires immediate settlement." Richard rolled his eyes, exuding the smug arrogance of a man who believed money was merely an abstract concept. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a heavy metal corporate credit card. He tossed it casually onto the glass patio table between them. "Put the balance on my card," Richard ordered. Then he looked directly at me, a nasty, victorious smirk twisting his lips. "Actually, no. Put it on Chloe's tab. She is the one who brought us to this god-forsaken island. She can pay for the inconvenience." Julian did not touch the card. He looked at me, raising an inquiring eyebrow. I smiled at my father, stepping forward so he could hear me perfectly over the sound of the ocean. "I authorize absolutely nothing," I stated clearly. "Their accounts are strictly independent of mine. I am not legally, morally, or financially responsible for a single dime they spend on this island." "You ungrateful little brat," Linda hissed, taking a step forward before remembering Marcus's earlier warning and freezing in place. Julian nodded, finally, picking up Richard's heavy metal card. He signaled to one of the security guards, who handed him a sleek mobile payment terminal. Julian inserted the chip. Richard crossed his arms, looking immensely pleased with himself. "It is a corporate account. It has a $500,000 limit. Run it and stop wasting my time." The terminal processed for 3 seconds, then it emitted a sharp, loud beep. The screen flashed bright red. "Declined." Julian stated, his voice carrying over the pool deck. Richard's confident smirk vanished. "What? That is impossible. The machine is broken. Run it again." Julian ran it again. The machine beeped identically. "Declined. Error code 59. Suspected fraud or account seizure." My father's face drained of color. He snatched the terminal from Julian's hand, staring at the glowing red screen as if it were a physical impossibility. "Try my personal Amex," he demanded frantically, pulling his wallet back out and shoving another card into the machine. Beep, declined. Richard stepped back, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at the cards, then at the machine, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. This makes no sense. The funds are there. The company is liquid. Actually, Richard? It makes perfect sense, Marcus said, finally breaking his silence. My father whipped his head around, his eyes wide with rising panic. What did you do? I did nothing. Marcus replied, his tone analytical and cold. The market did it for me. You defaulted on the mezzanine loans you took out to cover your manufacturing losses. Your grace period expired at midnight Eastern Standard Time. Your creditors did not grant an extension. They executed the asset seizure clauses this morning. Linda let out a high, thin wail. Harold, what is he talking about? Marcus stepped closer to my father, delivering the fatal blow with surgical precision. They froze your corporate accounts. They seized the operational capital. And because you foolishly used your personal estate as collateral to secure the final round of funding, your personal accounts are frozen as well. You are completely insolvent, Richard. You do not have $42,000. You do not have 42 cents. Richard staggered backward, hitting the edge of a lounge chair. He looked like a man who had just been shot in the chest but had not yet felt the pain. The reality of his absolute financial ruin crashed down upon him, crushing the decades of arrogant entitlement he had worn like armor. He was bankrupt. He was stranded on an island in the Indian Ocean. And he had just handed his credit cards to a man who knew he could not pay. Julian stepped forward, retrieving the mobile terminal from Richard's limp hand. He closed the black leather folio with a sharp, definitive snap. The situation is now perfectly clear, Julian said, stripping away the last ounce of hospitality from his voice. You have exactly 1 hour to secure $42,000 in cash or arrange an authorized wire transfer from a solvent institution. If the balance is not settled in full within 60 minutes, my security team will escort you to your room to pack your bags. You will be removed from the island and handed over to the local authorities in Malé for defrauding a luxury resort. Julian turned on his heel and walked away, his security detail falling in flawlessly behind him. Richard and Linda were left standing alone in the blinding sun, entirely stripped of their wealth, their power, and their pride. The 60 minutes evaporated faster than the morning dew on the teak deck. Richard spent the entirety of that hour pacing the perimeter of the infinity pool, frantically dialing his wealth managers, his brokers, and his personal bankers. Every single call ended in the same mechanical automated voice, informing him that the number was either disconnected or currently unavailable. His financial empire had not just crumbled, it had been surgically eradicated. We relocated to the grand open-air reception pavilion to await our scheduled afternoon yacht excursion. We did not have to wait long for the spectacle to resume. Richard and Linda marched into the lobby, refusing to accept the reality of their eviction. Richard slammed his fist onto the polished mahogany concierge desk, demanding to speak to the owner of the resort, threatening international lawsuits, and shouting about his non-existent status as a global VIP. Linda collapsed onto a plush velvet sofa, weeping loudly into her hands, crying out for someone to bring her a glass of chilled water. The resort staff simply stood back, maintaining their flawless professional silence. Julian materialized from the administrative offices flanked by 4 broad-shouldered security personnel. Your time has expired, Mr. Adams, Julian announced, his voice devoid of any warmth. You have failed to produce the required funds. You are now officially trespassing on private property. I am not going anywhere. Richard bellowed, his face a mask of purple fury. You cannot throw us out. We are American citizens. You will contact my embassy immediately. Julian offered a crisp, indifferent nod to his security team. Escort them to the departure dock. Bring their belongings. 2 security guards stepped forward, flanking my father. Richard tried to shove one of them away, shouting a barrage of empty threats, but the guards simply locked their hands around his upper arms and propelled him forward. He was frog-marched across the polished stone floor, his expensive Italian loafers scuffing awkwardly against the tiles. Linda shrieked, scrambling up from the sofa and chasing after him, her frantic wails echoing off the vaulted thatched roof of the pavilion. A fleet of electric golf carts arrived at the entrance, driven by the resort bellhops. They were loaded high with my family's mountain of Louis Vuitton and Gucci luggage. The carts bypassed the main lobby, entirely driving straight down the wooden boardwalk toward the seaplane departure dock. Security deposited Richard and Linda at the edge of the wooden pier, completely exposed to the harsh midday sun. A moment later, the bellhops began unceremoniously unloading the designer trunks, dropping them onto the wooden planks with heavy, definitive thuds. Then the final piece of the tragedy arrived. Sarah was escorted down the boardwalk by the same Maldivian police officers who had served her the custody injunction. She looked entirely broken. The frantic, screaming woman from the pool was gone. In her place was a hollow shell of a person. Her hair was drying in tangled, salty clumps. Her designer cover-up was wrinkled and stained. She clutched her own small overnight bag against her chest like a shield. The officers directed her toward the departure dock, guiding her to stand beside her bankrupt parents and their pile of luggage. Sarah looked at Richard, who was staring out at the turquoise water in a state of catatonic shock. She looked at Linda, who was sitting on a hard leather suitcase, sobbing hysterically. Then Sarah looked past them and saw Marcus and me standing comfortably under the shade of a large canvas umbrella, waiting for our yacht to pull around the bend. The absolute terrifying reality of her situation finally breached the walls of her delusion. She had no billionaire fiancé. She had no credit cards. She had no legal right to her daughter. She was stranded on a tiny speck of sand in the middle of the Indian Ocean, with parents who could not even afford to buy her a bottle of water. Sarah dropped her bag. She stumbled away from the police officers, ignoring her mother's cries, and practically crawled up the boardwalk toward us. When she reached the edge of our shaded canopy, her knees buckled. Sarah fell to the wooden planks, her bare legs scraping against the rough timber. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, bloodshot, and completely devoid of the arrogant pride she had worn her entire life. "Chloe." She gasped, her voice a ragged, desperate rasp. "Chloe, please." I looked down at the woman who had tormented me, belittled me, and used my child as a weapon. I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, no vindication. Just a profound, quiet emptiness. "Please," Sarah begged, clasping her hands together in front of her chest. "I will do anything. I will sign whatever you want. I will never bother you again. Just get me out of here. Please buy me a ticket home. I cannot stay here with them. I have nothing. Please, Chloe, I am begging you." She pressed her forehead against the wooden planks, sobbing violently at my feet. It was a total, pathetic surrender. I did not crouch down to comfort her. I did not offer her a single word of sisterly reassurance. I reached into my designer tote bag, my fingers brushing past my sunglasses and my passport wallet. I found my money clip. I slid out 2 crisp green bills. I looked down at Sarah's trembling shoulders. I dropped the money. The 2 $100 bills fluttered in the ocean breeze, landing softly on the wooden planks right next to her grasping hands. Sarah slowly lifted her head, staring at the $200 in absolute disbelief. "Babysit Mom and Dad," I said, my voice echoing with the exact chilling cadence she had used when she abandoned Lily in my apartment years ago. "You will have fun together." The wooden planks of the dock seemed to absorb the silence that followed my words. Sarah stared at the $200, her hands trembling as she clutched the bills like a lifeline. I turned my back on my family, taking Marcus by the arm, and we walked toward the waiting resort staff to coordinate our own departure. 4 hours later, the oppressive afternoon heat of the Malé International Transit Terminal was suffocating. The public waiting area was a chaotic sea of delayed tourists, crying infants, and overworked ticketing agents. The air conditioning was failing miserably against the equatorial humidity. Richard, Linda, and Sarah were slumped on a row of hard plastic chairs near the economy check-in counters. Their designer luggage was piled haphazardly around them, acting as a barricade against the crushing crowds. Linda was fanning her flushed face with a crumpled boarding pass envelope, her makeup entirely melted. Sarah sat with her knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the scuffed linoleum floor. Richard paced the length of their luggage mountain, his face a mask of sweating red-faced fury, aggressively dialing numbers into a cell phone that clearly had no international data plan remaining. They were thousands of miles from home, stripped of their credit lines, their dignity, and their power. $200 in cash would barely buy them stale sandwiches and water in this terminal, let alone 3 international tickets back to Boston. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls separating the public terminal from the private aviation sector, a sleek black Mercedes transport van glided to a halt. The tinted doors slid open. The blast of Arctic air conditioning from the vehicle was visible in the humid afternoon air. Marcus stepped out first, looking immaculate in a tailored navy suit. He turned and gently lifted Lily from her car seat, settling our daughter securely on his hip. She giggled, clutching a new stuffed sea turtle the resort staff had gifted her. I stepped out behind them, adjusting my sunglasses against the glare of the tarmac. We were being escorted directly to our waiting Gulfstream jet. A team of aviation concierges in crisp white uniforms immediately gathered our minimal luggage and guided us toward the automated glass doors of the VIP security checkpoint. From across the terminal, Richard spotted us. The sight of my family moving effortlessly toward a private jet while he suffocated in public transit broke the final fragile thread of his sanity. He dropped his useless cell phone. He shoved past a family of backpackers, ignoring their startled shouts, and sprinted toward the private aviation wing. Linda screamed his name, but Richard was entirely deaf to reason. He hit the velvet rope separating the public concourse from the VIP lane and shoved them aside with a violent swing of his arm. Chloe, Richard bellowed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings of the terminal. I paused, turning my head slightly as we approached the secure glass doors. Richard charged forward, his face contorted into a terrifying mask of desperation and rage. He threw his body into the path of the automated doors, just as they began to slide open, physically blocking our entrance. His suit was drenched in sweat, his eyes wide and manic. "You are not leaving us here!" Richard screamed, slamming his hands against the thick security glass. "You owe us. You are my daughter. We are blood. You do not walk away from your own flesh and blood, you ungrateful little wretch. Fix this right now, or I swear to God you will regret it." He was demanding blood loyalty from a woman he had treated like a disposable asset her entire life. He expected the daughter he had gleefully cut out of his will to suddenly open her checkbook and rescue him from his own spectacular ruin. Marcus shifted Lily to his other side, shielding her from the sight of her grandfather's unhinged meltdown. He did not say a word. He did not need to. Breaching a high-security VIP international aviation lane in a foreign country is a monumental mistake. Doing so while screaming threats and physically blocking a secure checkpoint is an invitation for immediate tactical response. Before Richard could hurl another threat, 3 heavily armed airport security officers descended upon him. They moved with ruthless, practiced efficiency. The lead officer tackled Richard from the side, hitting him with enough force to drive the breath from his lungs. Richard hit the polished floor with a loud, heavy thud. The remaining officers pinned his arms behind his back, pressing his face firmly into the cold linoleum while shouting commands in their native language. Richard thrashed against the floor, screaming about his rights, but his protests were instantly muffled as an officer secured metal restraints around his wrists. Linda and Sarah rushed to the edge of the velvet ropes, screaming hysterically as they watched the patriarch of their family get treated like a common criminal. The facade of the wealthy, untouchable Addams family was officially dead buried under the boots of airport security. The officers hauled a sputtering, handcuffed Richard to his feet, forcefully marching him away toward a holding room. The automated glass doors slid open, completely clear of obstructions. Marcus offered me a small, reassuring smile, adjusting his grip on our daughter. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. I looked at the chaotic scene unfolding in the public terminal. I looked at the spot on the floor where my father had just been pinned. I did not blink. I did not offer a single word of parting to the women screaming from behind the velvet ropes. "Absolutely," I replied. I stepped through the doors and walked out onto the sunlit tarmac toward our waiting jet, leaving them exactly where they belonged. The heavy acoustic doors of the Gulfstream sealed shut instantly, silencing the faint, chaotic hum of the terminal. The contrast was jarring. One moment we were surrounded by the desperate, sweating reality of my former family, and the next we were enveloped in the cool, leather-scented serenity of our private cabin. A flight attendant offered us chilled towels and sparkling water before discreetly retreating to the galley. Marcus secured Lily into a plush, oversized leather chair, handing her a tablet loaded with her favorite cartoons. Within minutes, the jet's twin engines roared to life, propelling us down the runway and lifting us into the endless blue sky above the Indian Ocean. I watched the tiny string of islands disappear beneath the clouds. For the first time in my 32 years, I did not feel a single ounce of guilt for leaving them behind. I reclined my seat, letting the deep vibration of the aircraft soothe the lingering adrenaline in my veins. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt and moved to the chair directly across from me. He reached out, taking both of my hands in his. His grip was warm and grounding. "You handled that perfectly," he said, his voice low and steady. "You did not engage. You did not compromise. You simply walked away." I looked at his hands, tracing the lines of his knuckles. "It took me a long time to get here," I admitted. "A lifetime of conditioning tells you that blood is an unbreakable bond. My parents raised me to believe that my sole purpose was to serve their image and facilitate their comfort. Whenever I tried to establish a boundary, I was branded as the difficult child, the ungrateful daughter. They weaponized guilt so effectively that I actually believed I was the problem." Marcus squeezed my fingers. "Narcissists rely on that exact psychological framework. They isolate their chosen scapegoats, surround themselves with enablers, and demand absolute compliance. Your father viewed you as a financial asset. Your mother viewed you as a social accessory. And your sister viewed you as a competitor she needed to destroy. None of them viewed you as a human being deserving of unconditional love." I nodded, the truth of his words resonating deep within my chest. I spent years trying to earn their respect. I thought if I built a successful company, if I achieved financial independence, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Sarah. But my success only made them resent me more. They did not want me to succeed. They wanted me to submit. "They wanted you small so they could feel big," Marcus corrected gently. "But you outgrew their cage, Chloe. You built an empire. You found your worth outside of their toxic echo chamber. What happened today was just the final collapse of their illusion. They pushed you expecting the frightened, compliant girl they raised. They ran face first into a woman who knows her own power." I looked over at Lily, who had fallen asleep, her small chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. "I will never let them near her again," I said, my voice hardening with absolute resolve. "I will break the cycle right here. She will never know what it feels like to be measured against a golden child. She will never have to earn her place in this family." Marcus smiled, a look of profound pride softening his sharp features. "The cycle is already broken. You shattered it the moment you refused to pay that hotel bill. You are free, Chloe. We are all free." We spent the next several hours in comfortable silence. I read a book, Marcus reviewed some legal documents on his laptop, and Lily slept soundly through the mild turbulence over the Pacific. As we entered American airspace, the aircraft's internal satellite Wi-Fi connected to the mainland networks. My phone, resting on the polished walnut table between Marcus and me, suddenly illuminated. A rapid succession of missed call alerts flooded the screen, followed immediately by a new voicemail notification. The caller ID displayed an unknown international number, but the location tag read, Malay Maldives. I stared at the screen. The urge to ignore it was strong, but a cold clinical curiosity won out. I wanted to hear the sound of their defeat. I picked up the device and tapped the screen. I did not raise the phone to my ear. Instead, I pressed the speaker icon, placing the phone back down on the wooden table so Marcus could hear it as well. A sharp burst of static hissed through the speaker, followed by the chaotic, echoing sounds of a crowded public space. Then my mother's voice filled the quiet cabin. "Chloe, Linda wailed, her voice high-pitched, ragged and thick with panic. Chloe, please pick up the phone. You have to help us. I leaned back in my seat, crossing my arms as I listened to the frantic audio. It is a nightmare here, Linda sobbed into the receiver. Airport security kept your father in a holding cell for 6 hours. They fined him thousands of dollars we do not have, and they confiscated his passport until the debt is cleared. We are sleeping on the floor near the baggage claim, Chloe. The floor. My back is in agony. Sarah will not stop crying, and she is absolutely no help at all. People are staring at us like we are vagrants. We have no money for food. The embassy told us they cannot intervene in civil financial disputes. We are stranded. She paused, gasping for air, the sheer terror of her reality bleeding through the digital connection. Please, Chloe. I know we were harsh, she begged, abandoning every shred of her usual aristocratic pride. I know Sarah made mistakes, but we are your family. You cannot leave us to rot in this place. I am begging you. Forgive us. Just wire the money. Buy us tickets home. We will change. I promise we will change. Just please, please pick up the phone. The voicemail ended with a sharp click, leaving the cabin in silence once more. I looked across the table at Marcus. He slowly closed his laptop, his dark eyes locking onto mine. He did not offer any advice. He did not suggest a course of action. He simply waited for me to make the final move. For a brief second, the ghost of the little girl who just wanted her mother's approval flickered in my chest. It would be so easy to fix it. A few taps on my banking app, and I could rescue them. I could buy their temporary gratitude. I could be the savior. But I looked at the phone and I remembered Sarah holding my child over the edge of a pool. I remembered my father trying to steal my company. I remembered my mother orchestrating my misery for decades. They were not sorry for what they had done. They were only sorry they had been caught stripped of their wealth and forced to face the consequences. I reached forward. I tapped the screen. I deleted the voicemail. Then, moving with deliberate, unhurried precision, I opened my contact settings. I selected Richard, Linda, and Sarah. One by one, I tapped the block caller option. I confirmed the action for each of them. I set the phone face down on the table. It would never ring with their toxicity again. I turned my attention to the window, watching the American coastline coming into view, ready to finally begin my life. The wheels of the Gulf Stream touched down on the tarmac in Boston, signaling the absolute end of the nightmare and the beginning of the reckoning. The legal machinery Marcus had set in motion before we even left the Maldives was already grinding forward with ruthless efficiency. We bypassed the standard, agonizingly slow family court delays. Marcus filed emergency injunctions citing extreme child endangerment, international flight risks, and documented financial extortion. Within 48 hours of our return, we were standing in a sterile mahogany-paneled courtroom at the Family Court District, presenting an ironclad case. The evidence of Sarah's chronic negligence was undeniable. Marcus laid out the unpaid nanny invoices, the erratic behavioral reports, and the sworn statements from the Maldivian authorities detailing Sarah's violent, unhinged behavior in public. The magistrate did not even require a lengthy deliberation. Looking over the thick binder of documented abuse, his face registered pure, unadulterated disgust. The gavel slammed down. Marcus was granted full, permanent, and sole legal and physical custody of Lily. Sarah's parental rights were entirely stripped, her visitation permanently revoked pending mandatory psychological evaluations she would never bother to attend. I stood beside my husband as he held the official decree, a heavy, monumental silence washing over us. Lily was legally ours. She was safe, insulated from the toxic storm of my family, and permanently anchored in a home where she was actually loved. It was the deepest breath I had taken in months. It took Sarah exactly 4 days to beg, borrow, and scheme her way back onto American soil. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly projections in my corner office on the 42nd floor when the internal security line chimed. My head of security, a towering ex-Marine named Vance, sounded unusually tense. "Ms. Adams, we have a situation in the main lobby." An individual claiming to be your sister is attempting to bypass the security turnstiles. She is highly agitated and refusing to leave the premises. Keep her contained. I instructed, my voice entirely flat. I am coming down. The elevator descent felt blissfully slow. When the polished steel doors parted to reveal the expansive white marble lobby of the skyscraper, the sheer contrast of the scene was almost jarring. The lobby was a temple of modern corporate wealth, filled with sharply dressed executives, cascading water features, and pristine architectural lines. And right in the center of it, screaming at a wall of impassive security guards, was Sarah. She looked absolutely atrocious. Her skin was peeling from a severe, untreated sunburn. Her hair was a tangled, unwashed mess, and she was wearing a cheap, wrinkled tracksuit that looked like it had been pulled from an airport lost and found bin. She clutched a plastic duty-free bag, her designer luggage nowhere to be seen. The glamorous, entitled socialite had been entirely burned away, leaving only a desperate feral creature. "Let me up!" Sarah shrieked, her voice cracking as she shoved ineffectually against Vance's broad chest. "She is my sister. She works here. You cannot keep me out of my sister's office." I stepped out of the elevator bay, the sharp click of my heels echoing off the marble floor. Vance stepped back immediately, clearing the path. Sarah's bloodshot eyes locked onto me wide with a manic, desperate relief. "Chloe," she gasped, practically throwing herself forward before security intercepted her again. "Tell these rent-a-cops to back off. I need to come up to your office. I have nothing left. Mom and Dad are still stuck in Dubai waiting on a wire transfer from Uncle Frank, and I barely made it back. You have to give me Lily. You have to give me money to get my apartment back." I stopped 10 feet away from her, my expression completely impassive. I folded my hands perfectly in front of my tailored suit. "You seem to be operating under a massive delusion, Sarah," I said, my voice carrying effortlessly through the cavernous space. "You do not have a sister anymore, and you certainly do not have a daughter. The courts finalized Marcus's sole custody 2 days ago. You are legally barred from coming within 500 feet of Lily." Sarah's jaw dropped, her sunburned face contorting with fresh, unhinged rage. "You stole her! You set me up! I am going to march up to your boss! I am going to get you fired, and I am going to sue you for every penny you have! Let me into this building right now!" I tilted my head, a slow, glacial smile spreading across my lips. I looked up at the towering glass ceiling, then back down to the pathetic woman thrashing against my security team. "You cannot get me fired, Sarah," I stated, enunciating every single syllable with lethal clarity. "And you cannot get into this building. Because I do not just work here. I own the building. I own the management company. I own the ground you are currently sweating on. You are trespassing on my private property." Sarah froze. The maniac energy drained out of her as her exhausted brain tried to process the sheer scale of the wealth she had entirely underestimated. She looked around the massive billion-dollar corporate lobby, realizing the absolute terrifying magnitude of the power I held. "Vance," I said, not breaking eye contact with my sister, "escort her out. If she resists, call the police and press trespassing charges." Vance and another guard immediately grabbed Sarah by the arms. She did not even have the energy to fight back this time. Her shoulders slumped, and she let herself be dragged backward across the polished marble, her rubber sandals squeaking pathetically against the stone. Just as they hauled her toward the revolving glass doors leading out to the busy city street, a nondescript man in a gray suit stepped smoothly into her path. He moved with practiced, invisible efficiency, completely ignoring the security guards. "Sarah Adams," the man asked, his tone brisk and professional. Sarah blinked, her eyes unfocused. "Yes," she mumbled, utterly defeated. The man reached into his breast pocket and withdrew a thick, tightly bound stack of legal documents. He slapped them firmly against her chest, forcing her to grab them by reflex. "You have been served," the man stated before, pivoting seamlessly and disappearing into the pedestrian foot traffic outside. Sarah looked down at the heavy stack of papers, her hands shaking so violently she nearly dropped them. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a new, fresh layer of absolute terror. "What is this?" she whimpered. I walked slowly toward the glass doors, stopping just out of her reach. I looked down at the documents, then directly into her eyes. "That is a civil lawsuit," I explained, my voice as cold and hard as the marble beneath our feet. "Marcus and I conducted a full forensic audit of the accounts you managed before you abandoned Lily. We found every single wire transfer, every hidden withdrawal, and every fake invoice you generated. We are suing you for the exact amount you stole from your own daughter's college fund, plus punitive damages and legal fees." Sarah stared at me, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "It totals nearly $500,000, I added, leaning in just slightly. "Have fun paying that back with the $200 I gave you." Sarah stared at the thick, bound stack of legal documents. The aggressive red sunburn on her skin seemed to instantly drain of blood, leaving her complexion a sickly, mottled gray. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly, mimicking a fish suffocating on dry land, but absolutely no sound escaped her throat. The sheer magnitude of the lawsuit paralyzed her nervous system. She looked from the papers to my face, searching for a trace of a bluff, a hint of sibling mercy. She found absolutely nothing but a cold, impenetrable wall of corporate stone. Vance and his security team did not wait for her to recover her senses. Moving with ruthless efficiency, they gripped her arms firmly, hauling her backward. Sarah's rubber sandals squeaked pathetically against the polished marble floor. They dragged her through the revolving glass doors and deposited her onto the bustling city sidewalk. I stood in the center of the lobby, watching through the pristine glass as the realization of her absolute ruin finally hit her. She collapsed against the exterior granite facade of my building, clutching the lawsuit to her chest, her face buried in her knees while pedestrians stepped around her in disgust. I turned on my heel, the sharp click of my shoes signaling the absolute end of my association with the Addams family. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing them in the past. 7 months later, the crisp November wind whipped aggressively across the wraparound terrace of our Chicago penthouse. Inside, the atmosphere was a deliberate, beautiful contrast to the bitter cold of the city. The massive open concept space was filled with the rich, savory scent of roasted turkey, caramelized root vegetables, and baking cinnamon apples. The modern gas fireplace crackled loudly, casting a warm, golden glow across the dark oak floors and plush, cream-colored furniture. This was not the rigid, performative holiday of my childhood. There was no Crystal to be terrified of breaking, no agonizingly strict dress codes, no calculated smiles, and no interactions treated as social transactions. This was a sanctuary. This was a home. Marcus stood at the massive marble kitchen island, his sleeves rolled up to the elbows, expertly carving the turkey with practiced precision. He laughed, a deep, resonant sound, at something Lily said, passing her a small, perfectly cut piece of meat. Lily sat on a high velvet stool, her legs swinging happily. She wore a bright yellow dress she had picked out entirely by herself, her dark hair pulled back into messy, joyful braids. She was thriving. The nervous shadows that used to haunt her eyes during her time with Sarah were completely eradicated. They were replaced by the bright, unburdened light of a child who knew she was completely safe, deeply loved, and fiercely protected. I walked into the kitchen carrying a heavy ceramic tray of roasted vegetables and bumped my hip gently against Marcus. He leaned over, pressing a warm, lingering kiss to my temple before returning his attention to the carving knife. We moved around each other with an effortless, synchronized rhythm, an unspoken partnership built on absolute trust and mutual respect. Lily hopped down from her stool, grabbing a handful of linen napkins to set the dining table. The table was beautiful, covered in a simple cloth lit by thick pillar candles and set for exactly 3 people. We did not need an audience to validate our happiness. We did not need extended family members making passive-aggressive remarks or demanding to be entertained. We had chosen our family, and it was perfect. I poured a glass of rich red wine, leaning against the cool marble counter as Marcus finished plating the food. The large flat-screen television in the adjacent living room played at a low volume, murmuring with the evening news broadcast. We usually ignored it, using the low hum merely as background noise, but a very familiar name suddenly caught my absolute attention. I set my wine glass down heavily on the counter. Marcus paused, the carving knife hovering completely still over the wooden cutting board. We both turned our heads toward the living room screen. The local news anchor, a woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a grave expression, looked directly into the camera lens. Tonight, we have a major update on the dramatic, unprecedented fall of the Adams family real estate empire, she announced, her voice crisp and deeply professional. Richard Adams, once considered a titan of the city's commercial development sector, officially filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy this morning. Court documents reveal a staggering financial collapse with liabilities exceeding $40 million. Banks have seized all remaining commercial assets, including the family's historic Beacon Hill estate, which is slated for public auction next month. The screen flashed to a wide, sweeping shot of the mansion I had grown up in. A massive, brightly colored foreclosure sign was hammered brutally into the pristine front lawn. The heavy iron gates were chained shut with thick padlocks. But the total financial ruin of the patriarch is only half the story. The anchor continued, her tone shifting to convey a much deeper severity. His daughter Sarah Adams appeared in federal court today for a preliminary hearing. A sterile courtroom sketch replaced the image of the mansion. It depicted a gaunt, unrecognizable Sarah sitting at a defense table. Her posture was completely slumped, flanked by an overworked public defender. Sarah Adams faces a litany of serious felony charges, the anchor reported. Following a sweeping financial audit, prosecutors indicted Adams on multiple counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. The charges stem from the systematic, calculated theft of nearly $500,000 from a minor's trust fund. Furthermore, the district attorney has attached severe child endangerment charges, citing documented incidents of extreme negligence abroad. Legal experts anticipate the judge will firmly deny bail given her previous attempts to flee the country. Sentencing is scheduled for early January, with prosecutors aggressively pushing for a maximum penalty of up to 15 years in federal prison. The broadcast transitioned rapidly to a chaotic clip of Richard and Linda Adams leaving the courthouse steps. They looked completely broken. Richard's tailored, expensive suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting cheap jacket. Linda held a large purse over her face to block the relentless camera flashes, physically shoving past, aggressively shouting reporters who demanded answers about their spectacular downfall. They hurried toward a waiting taxi, looking like exactly what they were: bankrupt, disgraced, and utterly alone in the world. The anchor seamlessly transitioned to the local holiday weather forecast, her tone lightening instantly. I looked away from the glowing screen, turning my attention back to the kitchen. Marcus met my gaze. He reached over the island counter and turned off the television with the remote, plunging the room back into the soft, comforting sounds of the crackling fire and Lily humming a cheerful tune to herself as she arranged the heavy silver forks. Marcus picked up his wine glass. I reached out and picked up mine. He stepped closer, the dancing firelight catching the sharp, handsome angles of his face. He did not say a single word about the broadcast. He did not mention Richard's spectacularly empty bank accounts or Sarah's impending, inevitable prison sentence. They no longer warranted our breath. They were ghosts permanently banished to the severe consequences of their own making. Marcus simply smiled, a genuine, deep smile that reached his dark, steady eyes. He raised his glass in a silent toast. I raised my glass to meet his. The heavy crystal chimed together with a clear, resonant ring that cut beautifully through the quiet warmth of the penthouse. From the adjacent dining room, Lily laughed brightly at a joke she had made up, her voice ringing out pure, joyous, and completely unburdened. I took a slow sip of the rich wine, turning my head to look through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond the thick glass, the city stretched out infinitely beneath us, a glittering, sprawling ocean of lights, pulsing with vibrant life and endless possibility. The freezing winter wind howled aggressively against the reinforced panes, completely unable to touch us. We were safe. We were victorious. We were home. The most profound lesson from Chloe's journey is that sharing a bloodline does not obligate you to endure endless toxicity and abuse. True family is built on a foundation of mutual respect, unconditional love, and psychological safety, not manipulation or financial exploitation. Chloe demonstrates that walking away from narcissistic relatives is not an act of cruelty, but a necessary step toward self-preservation and true empowerment. By enforcing absolute boundaries, she protected her peace and her daughter's future, proving that our chosen families often provide the genuine support our biological ones lack. Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with toxic relatives? Share your experiences in the comments below.